During this meditation, we are trying to unwind and learn how to relax. And I would like you to imagine your body, your tired body, painful body, or restless body, whichever kind of body, or peaceful body, whichever kind of body you have right now. Treat it like your best friend. If it was your best friend who is tired, who's in pain, who's in difficulty or discomfort, how do you respond? If it is somebody who you love, who you care about, you respond with affection, right? With care and with a lot of wishing them well, wanting them to be at ease, wanting them to be peaceful. So our body is like our friend, isn't it? Our heart never failed to beat since we were born or before we were born. If it did fail to beat, we're not here. Our lungs never fail to breathe, isn't it? A lot of the parts of our body faithfully, like a best friend, have been working really hard so that we can do whatever we need to do with life. Yes, certainly there are parts that have become unwell from time to time, but there are many parts of our body who've been working very faithfully for many, many years. So have that kindness, that affection to your body. Bring up a lot of affection in your heart for your own body. And really start to relax it. Allow it to settle down into here and now. If you find your mind is running here and there, sometimes it's just the echoes of the day, what you have been doing, what you have been thinking. You can use the touch sensations, the touch you feel on your palms, or the soles of your feet, or your bottom on the seat. And keeping your attention there, you can ground yourself to here and now. Like a body of water, settling down and becoming still when you leave it alone. In the same way, your body also can settle down, relax, and become still if you allow it to. And as you're settling down, your mindfulness will slowly start to pick up, wake up. And if you become aware to the breath coming in and breath going out very naturally, you can pay attention to that natural flow of the breath and use that as an anchor to ground yourself to here. A relaxed body is delightful. Notice whether you can see some delight coming up as you're relaxing deeply into this present moment. Bring up a smile into your face and see how the delight transpires into your mind as well. As we are coming close to the end of this short meditation, ask yourself, how do you feel? How is your body? How is your mind? Now I invite you to take 3 long, deep breaths. And at the end of the last one, you can open your eyes and come out of meditation. So, a very, very lovely topic has been given during the WhatsApp group, and that is about how to get rid of the sting in our life and, and to use a nice fragrance to replace it. Would that be a good thing to do in life? Is it? Yeah, isn't it? Because sometimes, when we wake up in the morning, we don't know what our day is going to be like, isn't it? And based on things that come our way through our sight, through sound, even through taste or touches, it starts to give us an unpleasant feeling. That's the stinkiness that we've been talking about. So, before I say anything myself, I want to read out a verse by the Buddha. This is in Dhammapada, and it is the Gatha number 54. So, not the sweet smell of flowers, not even the fragrance of sandal, tagara, or jasmine blows against the wind, but the fragrance of the virtuous blows against the wind. Truly, the virtuous man or woman pervades all directions with the fragrance of his or her virtue. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, we know this, isn't it? When, for example, imagine a time that you were in a room or in a place with somebody who spoke very beautifully. From time to time, we meet people who speaks words that goes to the heart. Very gentle, very beautiful, very kind, also beneficial. And not only they speak with just their mouth, but their whole demeanor, right? Their whole body language is so pleasing, so beautiful. And you feel straight away at ease in such a person's presence, isn't it? It's a very beautiful, pleasant experience to be in the presence of somebody like this. That is just speech, but also action. So sometimes you meet people who are extremely kind, extremely generous, yeah, do very beautiful, kind acts, caring acts. And even you can see people when they're thinking bad things or when they're thinking good things, isn't it? You can almost do a little bit of body language, read the body, and you can feel when people are thinking good things instead of fault finding, being negative. You can see people who are compassionate, generous, have gratitude. So we naturally feel and at ease, a very pleasant sensation. So this is what the Buddha is talking about. Yeah, virtue. Virtue is our behavior, our actions, our intentional actions through body, speech, and mind that are not harmful to ourselves and not harmful for others. And not only being not harmful, but also are beneficial to others and beneficial to oneself. So it is that virtue that is the fragrance. But it is easy to say, but hard to do, isn't it? Easy to say and hard to do. So virtue is always coming together with right view. We can't be virtuous by force, isn't it? I mean, sometimes people try to do it, but it's hard to sustain that with willpower. There comes a point we lose it if we do it just purely by willpower. But when the virtue stems out from right view, right understanding, then that is much more lasting, much more sustainable in the long run, and also very powerful. And also, virtue and right view are the foundations for developing satipatthana. So if you're interested, if you're keen in building up your mindfulness, it is given, you can look up Satipatthana Samyutta. Again and again in the suttas, the Buddha mentioned, the establishment of the Satipatthana is based on two foundations, Sila and Ujjuka Ditti. It is called straight view. It's the right view, another term for right view. So this is really important to remember for us. Yeah. So how we develop this with our challenging life is the thing, right? The life constantly throws challenges at us. These are the sights, sounds, tastes, touches, and things that shake us, that are unpleasant, things that we want to turn away from. And yet they seem to chase behind us, run after us, isn't it? And gives a hard time. So even though virtue is the fragrance, how do you make that fragrance? When you have virtue, that is the fragrance spreading all around. But how do you make that fragrance? You make it by using right view as a basis, right understanding. And what is right view is a very, very broad subject. And one aspect that is very helpful for in this occasion is given in the Vedana Samyutta. In one of the discourses, the Buddha talks about certain kind of right view that is very helpful. And that is understanding how we have an experience. How are these feelings coming about? So when we talk about a stink or a sting, either one, sting or a stink, they are feelings, right? Unpleasant feelings. So how do feelings come about? Feelings come about through what is called contact. In Pali, the word for contact is passa. So this is really important to understand this, to be able to apply and make our fragrance here. To give a basic understanding for the people who may not be fully aware of contact or passa, the terminology, or the Buddha's teachings, let me explain how the Buddha says it. So when there is a functioning I, when there is form, when you give attention, when those two get contact each other, when your eye contact a form, eye consciousness arises at that moment. The coming together of these three things, that is the eye, the form, and the arising of the eye consciousness, is called contact. So when one contacts something, then one feels. That is how the feeling is born. That whatever you feel, then you perceive it. What one perceives, one thinks about it. And that is where all of those emotions really become solidified. Isn't it? Sometimes it's just a small feeling, but you start to perceive it in certain ways, because perception, you have choice with your perception. You can perceive something, the same thing, in so many different ways. But depending on the way you perceive, the way you think about things, then you can generate a big story. Either it can become pleasant or unpleasant, the way you look at things. So not only just with the sight, with sound. This is one of the biggest generators of stink, right? Is the sound. You are having a peaceful day, minding your own business, and then somebody says something to you, or you hear something that really stirs you up, right? So the ear contacts sound, ear consciousness arises, and the contact happens, and as a result of that, you have some feeling. And with that feeling, the way you perceive it, the way you think about it, the way you attend to it, gives rise to either a stink or a fragrance. So now to demonstrate this is my very famous way of demonstrating this, is like this difficult person in your life saying difficult things to you. And probably they have been doing this for years. And you respond in the same way, you get affected by the same way. But the thing is, when you apply the Buddha's teachings, these beautiful mental training techniques, you are able to turn around even something that is very unpleasant into something that is not so unpleasant, neutral, or even pleasant. So this is how you do it, right? So when this difficult person, for example, let's say, is starting to say things that are difficult. So when you think about it, that they shouldn't say like this, they shouldn't speak like this is incorrect, this is hurtful, this is harmful, shouldn't be done. So this is one way of attending towards this, right? One way of attending towards this. And when we attend like that, what happens? Irritation, anger, this is the sting, starts to come up in our mind. However, we forget that we do have a choice in this occasion. We have a choice. We can also ask, why are they saying like that? What is the reason for their behavior? When we ask that question, why, this is called wise attention, yoniso manasikara, always pointing towards the causes. What is the cause and condition giving rise to their behavior, their unskillful behavior that is causing difficulty in my life or into other people's life? And you might find out maybe they have a different type of worldview. They might be slightly mad or severely mad, or they're suffering from something. They have a difficult time. There's so many reasons for people's behaviors, right? Our problem is we are expecting people to do much better than what they're actually capable of. and ourselves too. This is the reality. Yeah, nobody in their right mind would do anything that is hurtful or harmful for another person. If they do it simply because they can't help it. And a lot of the time, the people who give us a hard time make unpleasant experience for other people are enormously suffering themselves. It's a result of their own personal suffering that they behave in ways that are difficult and creates that stink in us. So if we take time to really understand situations, really understand people and their behaviors, then the stink isn't as stinky because you understand why. But like what we spoke last time, again, this is very similar, right? Last time was not to take revenge and understanding, yet these people, whatever they do, they're the owners of their karma. When we remember that again, compassion comes up in our heart, right? So this is just the mental training technique is looking, and the way you give attention, you change that. Before, you were attending unwisely, saying, this shouldn't be done, this is wrong, this is bad, all of these things, just judging. That's not helpful. And it is sometimes coming from our own ego as well. And also sometimes thinking what we know and what we think is right. But sometimes there's more things in life, more broader as well. And why not? But instead of, always thinking and attending in a way that gives rise to these negative mind states, we can always look into causes. And when we look into causes, once that understanding comes, especially when we see the conditionality, just the same talk like last week, really things start to change. Things start to become better. So this is really that right view, right understanding, right way of attending into things makes a big difference in our life. So this is really how we can make a unpleasant, turn around an unpleasant experience into something pleasant. So when we are able to sort of maintain that at least a little bit of cool in our own heart, then we can respond to things in a cool way, in a virtuous way, in a kind way. If we get affected by these other people's unskillful behaviors, and if it triggers negative emotions inside of us, then our behavior is also going to be unskillful. And that is when we behave unskillfully, that is when things really start to stink. Not just the other person's behavior, it's our own unskillful behavior that makes the experience a lot more unpleasant and unbearable. And you can reflect back at times. We have all done this many times in our life, that we have spoken not so kindly to somebody. We have snapped back or raised our voice or been sarcastic, even that much. How did we feel afterwards? Quite bad, right? So that's the real stink. It's not really the other person. Other person doing is one level, but our response when that has been unskillful, that is really the real bad smell, the real painful feeling. So therefore, when we remember that, that is why the Buddha said that virtue is the fragrance. So our own behavior, if we can guard ourselves, our response to how we react to something, that is where we can turn things around. So it takes quite a lot of time, a lot of mental development. So in the meantime, we had to bear with unpleasant experiences to some degree. So we had to be patient, understanding This is what it is like to be born. This is what it is like to exist in samsara. Samsara is not really a pleasant place. We just think that it is. We're constantly looking for that pleasant, beautiful, nice place. But existence is inherently suffering. This is what the Buddha said in the first Noble Truth, right? This is really powerful when we reflect like that. You understand this is what it is like. So the whole spiritual path is about turning things around and learning how to sort of behave, to respond to these things in a skillful way so that stink is not so bad and you can even create fragrance around yourself. And you also see that when you calm down, when you become cool, when you become a kind and caring person, truly, it does have an effect on your surroundings. Maybe not to the level you expect and not as fast as you want, but it does make a change. And I'm sure you know this, you have experienced this as well. When you don't fire up, when you become cool like an ice cube, even if a big torch of fire comes to you, it can't really burn you, isn't it? But if you were like really, very inflammable little dry twigs, the flame doesn't even have to touch you, you are burning. So this is why. So it is all about not, instead of pointing our finger to outside, it is pointing the finger to ourselves and see, where can I make a change? How can I become this fragrance body? So even there is stink outside, it doesn't get to us because you have like a bubble of aroma around you. So the whole spiritual path is all about that. Slowly, slowly building up, starting with right view. So that is where right view is placed number one in the Noble Eightfold Path. So slowly, slowly learning about it and slowly, slowly applying it to your life. And this is how you can start to make a difference. So, as always, it's easy for me to say this. It is easy for us to sort of shake our heads and say, yes, it makes sense. If we are able to look at things in a different way, attend to things in a different way, then, things are going to change. We know this. But our problem is when things are happening, when we are trying to do it, we find it's extremely hard at times. To apply ourselves is hard. We know the technique. We know it's going to work, but trying to do it sometimes is hard. It's the same old thing that I repeat again and again in every single talk, and that is the reason why it is hard for us is because we don't have enough joy in our mind, enough happiness in our mind. And joy and happiness starts from rest, from relaxation, and then doing good things, being kind, being generous. So once we are able to build up in some way or the other, you have to start where you are at and do what works for you to bring up joy into your mind, some happiness into your mind. And once you have that mental energy, then you can slowly build up. Isn't that the case when you are a bit grumpy? That is the day that you make most of the mistakes. The days that you are grumpy, when your mental energy is low, your speech isn't great, your actions are bad, and the way you think is also bad. But it is hard. Sometimes you just feel grumpy. You wake up and you just feel grumpy. This is what it is like to be a human being, yeah? So what do you do when you at least recognize this is the state of your mind, this is the state of affairs today? Take a little bit of time instead of rushing into judging yourself, giving yourself a hard time for being grumpy and feeling grumpy or whatever. Say it's okay. I allow myself to be like that. There's a reason why I feel the way I do. Look back and see, and you might see, well, maybe you didn't have a good night's sleep. Maybe you're unwell. Maybe some other problems are there in your life. Whatever it is, there's always a reason why you feel grumpy, why you feel low energy in your mind and body. So take a little bit of time for self-reflection. Get in touch with your body. Get in touch with your mind and see what's going on. Ask the question, why? And see whether there is something you can do to help yourself. It could be something so simple, like having a little bit longer sleep. It could be as simple as going for a walk. It could be as simple as even having a cup of coffee. Yeah. And then the next level is always, after that, when you got a little bit of mental energy, a little bit of a lift, then it is important to do something that bring up the bigger kind of happiness. And that is always generosity. So making somebody else happy. You're doing something kind to somebody, caring to somebody. And that gives a lift into your mind. When that happens, it goes to another level. Then you have enough energy to be kind by body, speech, and mind. It's always like that. You can't force yourself. You can't will it. You can for a little while, but you can't sustain it. You can't will to be kind, right? You can't really force yourself to do these things. We know that. We've tried it. You lose it at some point, and that's when you get hysteric or you really put up a tantrum. And we've all done this, so you know. So these things are to be done skillfully. Especially if things are difficult, then it is even more important that you really have time for yourself a little bit. Somehow you have to do that. This is important. Otherwise, things are going from bad to worse, and that is when the sting become unbearable. Right? It's really, really important that if things are going, then you have to prioritize. We can't have and do everything that is in front of us. So you have to choose and prioritize the things that you have to do to survive. And then you have to let go of a few other things that would be good to do, but it's more important that you have some rest, some relaxation, and do some things to bring up some joy into your life. This is really important because we are all so busy trying to do so many things. What for? Yeah, what for? And wearing ourselves, getting really, really tired and exhausted. And there's no point continuing to live our life in this way. If it is your job, seriously think about it. Think about changing careers. It's all right. Even if you have the most highest education in a certain field and you invested many, many years into that. But now you realize, well, that's too stressful, that's too time consuming, or the job itself is very exhausting. It's foolish just to continue in that way for the rest of your life and make a mess of your life. There's no point into doing like that, really. So it's really, really important that we do this kind of self-reflection, and make some necessary changes to our lifestyle so that you have time, especially for rest. We spoke about this many, many times, that all of the developments of the path starts with rest. So why life is very difficult to bear or things seem stinky is because when we are tired. But when we are not tired, when we are relaxed, things are actually quite easy to bear, easy to deal with. And then we can do our own thing to generate virtue and spread that fragrance around us. So our loved ones can also benefit from it. So this is the short Dhamma reflection that I wish to share for this evening. I would like to have some questions.
First of all, we say thank you for the most beautiful Dhamma talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yes.
Thank you for again for the most beautiful talk. I also find it very helpful to reflect on the three characteristics, because otherwise our minds go off in this and that, and we imagine and we work things out. We have to come back to the very basics of the tilakanas, of the three characteristics, because that actually brings things in real order, rather than, opinion and here and there. I find it for myself, because my mind was like that, or is still a little bit like that. So then I more and more bring into the foreground the three characteristics, and yeah.
So this is the right view. That is part of the right view. Yeah. The three characteristics. Okay, there is a question from Ishika. And there are quite a few. Yeah, okay. What to do when you catch yourself getting a bit negative in conversations? Yes. Oh, this is Alex. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, actually catching yourself is already really good sign, because they're one step ahead.
Yeah.
Because very many times in our life, we don't even realize the conversation is over and we've done all the mistakes, and it's become really, difficult and bad for oneself and others. But when you catch yourself even mid-conversation, mid-sentence, that shows that you have a certain degree of mindfulness established, and that you have a certain care to want to do things differently. That itself is really, really important. Yeah. So that is when you are able to catch yourself, then you can make a lot of difference. So you can find small little ways to help yourself. So it is our impulsive actions that cause difficulty. So even conversation, because our mouth is very fast. It's as if it has a life of its own. It speaks very quickly. So that impulsive actions by us is the most dangerous to oneself and to others. So in this occasion, when you catch yourself getting negative, the best is to notice and realize why, and quickly look into the mind how you are reacting to what you are hearing, because this is in the conversation you mentioned. So the conversation is going, and of course there will be judgments, comparisons. How are you taking in the information, and how are you thinking about it? And it is that is creating that negativity in the mind. So once you see that, you are able to sort of change that. It really is possible. At the very least, once you notice that, you can take a step back and sort of disengage a little bit from that. The main thing is that in the conversation, obviously the other party is telling things that are unexpected, unacceptable, or not quite right, or harmful, or whatever. And then you realize, again, applying this thing, why is happening? It's already happening. We are all kind of programmed like robots. This is the three characteristics, the non-self part. And also remembering that feeling only lasts while that contact is there. When that contact of hearing in a conversation ends, that feeling has to end. Only if we carry it through, if we won't let it go, that it'll be with us. Yeah. So it's really important to have that understanding. Yeah, whatever is causing that negative emotions to come up in your mind based on a sound in this occasion, because it's about a conversation. When the conversation ends, it should end. So that is part of that right view, which I forgot to actually say. I was mentioning that, but in one of the suttas in the Vedana Sanghata, the Buddha say that understanding the fleeting nature of contact, the fleeting nature of feeling itself is your right view. So the more and more we understand how transient these things, how unreliable our experiences are, whatever it may be, whether it is an experience of sound, whether experience of sight, they are very unreliable and last only for a short time. Once we remember this, even in the mid-conversation, again, that gives you a little bit of a release, an ability to be patient with yourself. But also, there are many other things you can do. If the conversation is getting really heated up, you can ask to have a break. It is all right to do this. Yeah, it is okay to say, this is a bit too much for me right now. Can we have a short break? Can we have and you can walk away for a little bit after having said that. Not without. It is then difficult, but you can say, I need a break. I need some space. Can we come back to this a little later? So there are many, many ways that you can do. But if you just stay there, allowing that to grow, that is when it becomes dangerous. So depending on how it is, when you notice the negative feelings coming up, you can do something. So either having a break, thinking about it in a different way. So, and especially not to respond back quickly. So you tell yourself, okay, I can feel I'm getting negative or I'm getting, emotional or whatever. And then you say, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to respond straight away. You can ask always for time. Let me think about it. Can we talk about this later? Can I respond to you later? Yeah. So this is the thing, but this is very, very difficult because conversations happen very quickly, especially when it is a heated conversation. So it is about predetermining these things. So at a time when you are peaceful, at a time when you have a bit of mindfulness, after a bit of good meditation, is the time that you tell yourself, because a lot of these things are repeated events, especially with people who are close to us. So therefore, we can do something about it. So anyway, let me just see the other things that are there. So one of the questions is, you say try to understand the causes of others' actions, but can we ever know that? Not really. We can never fully know that. Yeah, we can never fully know that. But what we can have some trust in is all of these things have some kind of reason, for happening, and you can trust that the people who have unskillful behaviors have, to a large degree, some wrong view, quite a bit of suffering in their lives. So once you understand that itself is helpful. We don't necessarily need to know all the nitty-gritty and details and names and places of what happened and all that. But that general understanding itself is enough. Because you can never find out, but sometimes you can find out if it is somebody close to you. You can really find out as well some things. But of course, we can not get the full picture, because sometimes it's not just things that are from this life, even from past lives. So it's hard to understand everything, but what I'm trying to say is that we understand there is a reason behind people's actions. We are all conditioned, right? So once you understand, so that was some kind of unskillful conditioning now unfolding and creating problems for oneself and others. So that much is what I was mainly referring to. And then next one, it says, I also find sending metta to oneself and everyone around help immensely to change toxic environments. It's very true. And if you are able to do that, that is excellent. And but however, the difficulty is sometimes when we are in a toxic, difficult environment, if we haven't built up good foundations, if we haven't built up a good practice in metta, it can be quite difficult. So that is why we have to prepare ourselves ahead of time. So if we are able to build up metta within, and outside of these toxic environments and make much of it and become strong in our practice, then we are able to use that. So that kindness. But metta also comes from right view, right understanding. So once you understand the situation, the difficulty of the other person, it becomes possible to send metta. But without, it is a bit hard. And also, again, when you have a good mind state, when you are in a good state, when you have joy states, that is when you can send metta. But if you don't have my joy states, if your mind is down and depressed, then it is not really possible to really do proper metta. You can say it, but whether it is actually coming out, whether it is true metta, it's hard to say. But of course, metta is a very helpful thing when it is possible to be done, but at times it can be difficult. How do you know that difficult people are having a tough time, though a tough life? Do the stinky people know they are stinky? Well, actually, you'll be surprised that they do know. Quite a lot of them will know, yeah, because it is unpleasant, but they can't help it. But some others may not really realize, because there are also people with various levels of mental health issues as well in our life. Yeah, so some people may not be aware of their actions and their consequences. So it is hard to know. But the thing is, we definitely know people's bad behaviors are reflecting their mind state. Yeah, it is, their minds are full of defilements. That is why they behave, either defiled by greed, defiled by hatred, or defiled by their big ego. So these are the things. So these things are states of suffering. Yeah, these are itself states of suffering. That is why I mentioned, even for ourselves, when we have this in our mind, we know what kind of suffering that is. So you know that it's like that. That is what the Buddha also says, like, you know, why people do these things is as a way of trying to get rid of their suffering. They do these unskillful things as a result of trying a way out. But in their delusion, when their mind is covered with these defilements, the Buddha says, it's like you don't have eyes. It's like you are in the dark. Yeah. And your wisdom has departed. And that is why you just do, in the name of, you know, trying to help yourself to feel better, you do things that are difficult for others. So it is something that you can actually know that they are having a hard life, even though they might in superficially try to act in a nice way, smile, laugh, and, you know, have a jolly good time. Deep down, they are having a hard time and having suffering in their life, and that is why they're doing these things. So this is some wisdom that grows inside of you as you get to know people, as you get to know situations, as you try to pay attention to the question why this is happening. Slowly, slowly, you will try to see the human condition, how people are, especially when you try to understand your own self and the things that you do, because we are also a difficult person for somebody in the world, right? We are also not perfectly arahant beings. So we are also somebody in the world will find us as a difficult person. Then you can see for yourself the things that you do that you know are difficult and why you do them. Then you realize, yeah, this is how it is. So that's what I will say for that. And how to cultivate happiness when I am feeling little down. Yes. So, how to create happiness when you're feeling down? A really beautiful source of happiness is service. But not just doing the service, but reflecting on it. Yeah, reflecting on it. It's not about whether, after having done a service, whether other people were happy about it or not, or whether they appreciated it or not, or whether the work turned out to be exactly how you wanted it. It's not that, but that your willingness to do something good to somebody or somewhere. So making somebody else happy or doing some service and help is always a very nice trigger to bring up your mind. I find it very helpful because at the monastery, I make somebody a drink, yeah, or give a compliment to somebody. So doing something like that is gives a lift quite easily to your mind. But also for people who really appreciate the teachings, listening to a very inspiring dhamma talk can uplift. Or even inspiring talk altogether. There are very many nice, inspiring stories about people and doing good things in the world. So you have to find something that would inspire yourself. So when feeling down, this is important, this kind of thing. There are many, many things. Even going for a walk, doing some exercise can also be to some degree. But in the Buddha's teachings, the things are all the anusati. So remembering the goodness, your generosity, your sila, or remembering the good qualities of the Buddha, the beautiful teachings, all of these things are actually sources to uplift the mind. So also you can listen to the talk on how to practice when you're depressed. I spoke quite a lot of these things during that talk. And if someone has fatalistic view, can you help a person? Well, it depends. When people have wrong view, it's hard. The Buddha said, of all the things, the most dangerous thing and the most difficult thing is wrong view. So it depends on whether the person is flexible and how skillful you are in conveying the message. So yeah, so it depends on the person and how stubborn they are with their view. If somebody is very strong with their view, it's very hard. So even the Buddha didn't speak to people who had really strong views because he saw it's a waste of time. But depends. So you can try and see. Okay. Why do we sometimes still feel bad about having said something unskillful to others, even though it may have happened some time ago? Who can we do, what can we do about it, even though we know it is wise to forgive and forget and send metta to all? Yeah, this is really important, right? This is really something that we are skilled at. We are good at eating old food. We like to keep, we don't want to let go of these things, right? Whether it's your own unskillful actions or whether it's somebody else's. We like to hold on to these things and we almost indulge with these things. So this is the problem. But in this occasion, this is about oneself and not being able to forgive oneself for one's unskillful actions, it's really building up slowly right view. I too am in this samsara. I too have only a limited amount of wisdom yet. I am still growing in my practice. Yeah. So of course, then I too have defilements. So based on my defilements, when they are present, I have done these things. I couldn't help it at the time. But holding on to it isn't going to do any good to myself or to others or to both. So we have to keep telling ourselves and see a way forward. It is really, really important to find ways to forgive ourselves. And then, of course, if there is something you can do to help the situation, that's always helpful. But really important, once you see that conditionality, it's also a habit. It really is a habit to indulge in our own unskillful behavior and mistakes. I don't know. People have a tendency to beat ourselves up. It's almost ingrained or trained, or, in culturally also, it's kind of there. You see other people doing it and you think you must do it or whatever. It's kind of like a habit as well. So when you recognize these things and recognize the uselessness of that, because it doesn't do any good to anybody, right? It's a terrible mind state, and as you are not in a good mind state because you can't forgive yourself and you remember the bad things, then in the present also you can make more mistakes. So you can see the danger of these kinds of things, and the real danger is that one takes oneself into bad realms when you don't need to at times. Sometimes it's a small thing that you have done, but you really give yourself a hard time unnecessarily. So just look through that and see it's much better to really forgive oneself, and it's deeply, deeply empowering yourself to grow in your Dhamma path. And in fact, if you can't forgive yourself, it is actually hindering the Dhamma path. Now, if you want a boost, I can actually tell a direct teaching from the Buddha, right? There are many, many places this comes up. One of the places is in Anguttara Nikaya, book 10, Na Chetana Karaniya Sutta, and it starts in there's Sila Sutta, there's quite a few suttas, and it starts, the meditation psychology starts that the first requirement, if you want to start meditation, if you want to get samadhi, is that you do not have remorse. So when the mind does not have regret and remorse, then the mind has what they call pamoja, gladness. So there itself, you can see if you can't forgive ourselves and if we harbor regrets and remorse of our bad actions, then the path of meditation is close to us. What a terrible thing that is, isn't it? It's not necessary. And this doesn't mean that we are all perfect beings and we'll never make mistakes. Not at all. We will constantly make mistakes because when we are as yet unenlightened, when we are in the forces of defilements, from time to time, we will make mistakes. So it is really, really important to learn how to forgive ourselves by seeing the conditional nature of our own unskillful actions. Why did I do that? What triggered me? What got me there? And there's always, you can see. So you see, this is how it is. This is what it is like to be in samsara. So, but there is no point in regretting and having remorse and not being able to let it go, because the whole path of cultivation of your mind is closed. So that is why forgiveness is a huge thing in the Buddhist path, being able to forgive oneself and forgive others. So once the regrets and remorse is settled properly, then the mind gets gladness. And then the Buddha says you don't have to exert will to say that may my mind have piti or joy or rapture. When the mind is glad, the present moment is pleasant. As you stay for a little longer, it just turns into piti. And then you don't have to again exert will From piti, it goes to pasadi, tranquility. And from prasadi to happiness, sukha. And from sukha to stillness, to deep meditation. So it's really important. So when you see also the danger in not being able to forgive oneself, you again think that it is important to do something about it. So this is important. That's why I took quite a bit of time. So thank you all for being here.